Hi everyone, I'm Tania.
And I'm Adriana.
And we're here with Closing the Gap, a social justice podcast. We are now wrapping up season 2, so thank you for everyone who has been with us since season 1. It has been quite a journey so far. I feel like we're still just in the beginning. This podcast is all about social justice, what that means for us, how that connects to collective healing, and embracing progress so we can move society forward and so we can all feel like we can create together a world that works for everybody, for people of different backgrounds, different abilities, and not the current world that we're living in. This episode today will show one issue that has been very popular recently, and it will highlight how issues like this are creating the need for having social justice movements, because if not, then many people will be harmed and we won't be able to create the world that we want that's very equal and fair and just. So we know it's a heavy topic, but we hope you all will listen towards the end, because we, as always, will share ways to come together, take action, and support one another during these times and the future.
Totally. I can't say enough how this topic really is kind of a long time coming. It's an issue that all parts of the world deal with, but specifically right now, it feels like the United States in particular is going through a very difficult time because of our current administration and just the way that they're going about and really dehumanizing a lot of people through its current policies. We can't not say anything. Although to Tanya's point, yes, it's very heavy. And I know a lot of these things need to be said, but it's tough sometimes to talk about these things because of how close to home it hits.
Yeah, so this topic of today is migration. We have touched on migration a lot throughout the last 2 seasons because we're both daughter of immigrants. And so it's natural that we talk about how that created the people we are today, how that helped us see the issues that we talk about on this podcast in the current lens that we have. We felt like this was a good way to talk about something that we care about, but also that's very timely, and also end the season with this because it's something that we felt like went along with everything else that we're talking about this season. So if you haven't listened to the rest of this season, a lot of the episodes we discussed were based on climate or environment, because climate change is what we're dealing with now. And we tied each episode to social justice and how these all connected, how every issue connects to our well-being, the environment's well-being, and how it all becomes social justice. That's why you hear terms like environmental justice and climate justice, because they really are all connected. So my personal reason for caring about migration is, of course, like I said, my parents are from another country and they migrated to the US, but also as a climate justice advocate and just someone who's very in the climate space, migration is happening a lot more than it has for different reasons that didn't happen before. The same reasons are still there, because people need livelihoods or people are unsafe where they're living, either because of the job they have or the connections they have. But climate change has created a lot of migration as well. So it felt fitting to talk about it, not necessarily just through that lens, but just the fact that it's happening. It's happening for that reason, for climate change. In light of climate change, it's just going to keep increasing every year because of the way that climate change is happening and how we're now adjusting it on a global scale like we should be. I feel like if we talk about migration, what that means for our communities, what that means policy-wise, then we can actually address it rather than kind of just hoping it'll get better, because from my point of view, it won't get better, and it'll probably only get worse. And people should be able to flee if they feel like they're unsafe. So it should keep happening as long as people need to get to safer places. And what needs to change is not the fact that it's happening, but more about how we're addressing it.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're all sharing this land together, right? It's not, no one person owns any sort of resources. I think we've definitely also have touched about the importance of that, understanding that as well. We all need to come together. And really, it just comes down to the policies that are being allowed here in the United States as well. And I think that's a really good point of how there's just a lack of understanding of why people are wanting to come into the United States. No one chooses to uproot their livelihoods from where they're from by choice, just because. Like, there's always a good enough reason, whether it is because of climate or other serious factors. And I think one starting point that I really would love us to acknowledge here is the responsibility that the United States really has in allowing and continuing to protect our neighbors. A lot of migrants come from neighboring countries in Latin America, and a lot of the reasons they're coming here is because of one, not only just needing a better life, but for safety. Unfortunately, there are circumstances in some of the Latin American countries that people just don't feel safe for one reason or another, and we have to acknowledge that the United States has played into the reasons why many of those places aren't safe. Looking at it from a climate aspect, we've taken advantage of so many resources for our own personal gain. We've also interfered with elections over there and caused a lot of tension within those countries and their own policies. So that is one thing I really would like all of us, whether how much we're aware of it now currently, that the United States does have a responsibility, and that we're not anyone to deny any resources to our neighbors, whether they're, again, coming from Latin America or even across waters.
Yeah, if the United States government was ethical, oh God, how the world would be different. And not even just the United States, a lot of European countries as well. Like Adriana said in the beginning, this is happening in other parts of the world where people are migrating to the north and they're being sent back. They're saying, you don't belong here, we don't want you here. And so this is not just the United States. And they have similar reasons for going there as well. I also read recently, someone was saying, well, I never thought about it this way, that it's not only that the global north, as in the US and Europe, exploited the global south, as in Latin America, Africa, parts of Asia, and they continue to do so, that creates these conditions. But also, as people in the global south who now have these languages that are there because of these colonizers, English and Spanish throughout the world is there, and French is there because of Europeans who went and colonized there, and the United States, who is one of the biggest English-speaking country and forces a lot of other countries to speak English as well. And so I didn't think about it this way, but someone said, I think it was just a social media post, that of course people now have this connection to these countries that they're going to because they think, oh, well, I don't want to go to just any country that doesn't speak my language that I now have to learn. I mean, of course, those countries had other languages before, and so did the United States. We had a lot of Native American cultures with their own languages before the United States was the United States. But it helped me see that people are also just trying to find some kind of connection and belonging, knowing that they are losing all that connection and belonging to their homeland, to their communities back home. So there are just so many factors that come with considering that, and there's a political reasons, but also there's just an individual reason. Someone who may feel like, I just don't belong here, this country is way different from what it used to be because of these influences, and I'm just trying to find somewhere where I feel like I can be myself. And so yeah, who are we to say that they aren't allowed to do that?
100%. And I think really the main point that we're trying to get around as far as why it's important to understand these things is, given the way that our world is progressing, it's not crazy to think that you could be in those same shoes. It's not crazy to think that it could easily be you. And the people who do push in favor of these malpractices currently with migrants, they really like to push that, like, this superior complex. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We have to fight against this attack against empathy, because if it were the other way around, we would want the same type of help and resources that are a human right. Another reason why it's kind of hypocritical currently in our climate with everything going on is just the lack of proper policy. The United States has always been having this savior kind of complex and saying that we do things the right way. And here you have a right to trials, and that we're not, for lack of better words, we're not barbaric. We have structure, and that's what sets us apart from these other countries that we, in my opinion, the US tends to criticize. Yet with our current administration, we're acting completely lawless. Really, the most difficult part of talking about this is just seeing how dehumanizing the current strategies are being utilized to deport people who have every right to be in this country. Just recently, the Trump administration just decided to cancel the protected status of Venezuelans. And although there's a lot of controversy with those migrants, there's a reason that they're leaving Venezuela. If you keep up with the history, again, that's a prime example of where the US is just playing a little bit too much in a role of wanting to have their influence there. And we definitely aren't completely innocent in the role that we've played in the issues that have been happening in that country. And those people that are no longer protected, we don't know the prosecution that they're going to face when returning home. We have to remember that these are human lives, and the way that we're going about how we're choosing to deport people, the policies are just currently disgusting and really contradict what the US is supposed to stand for, quote unquote.
Yeah, something you said that we should care about this because this could be us. And I wanted to add, and just because it isn't you now, it could still be you one day. Like, just because you weren't born in those circumstances doesn't mean your circumstances can't change. You may be safe right now, but again, with climate change, a disaster can hit your home and you may need to leave. Or with something else, if a social disaster happens, a civil war, like who knows? There are just so many things that could happen and you can't predict the future. And so you may one day need to migrate. And so, yes, of course, why not be there for the people who need you now? And then one day they can maybe do the same in return, hopefully, or other people will be there for you. So, because I feel like sometimes people think, well, like that isn't me. And they just think that, this is me now and so I'll always be safe. And I just wanted to mention that things change all the time. In regards to the policies, yeah, the Trump administration loves rollbacks. That's like their big thing. Like as soon as Trump started, especially because it's his second term, he already knew what laws the Biden administration before him had put back that he wanted to roll back again. And so it's just this constant back and forth between which laws are being used and which ones are being taken away again. The biggest one for me is taking away asylum and refugee opportunities, because people complain that, and the whole rhetoric here that the Trump administration is pushing is people just need to come legally and then they're welcome. And that's just not true. It's just a fact that it's not true. If people do come here legally, they may be able to go through the system that is very manipulative, that is a maze. It is so confusing to figure out. And if you don't have a bunch of money or a bunch of connections or a bunch of resources, you probably won't figure it out on your own, or it's at least very hard to before. And now he completely cut that off. Like he's just trying to make it very, very hard, if nearly impossible, to become a citizen. So this rhetoric that he keeps pushing and that Republicans push and that people who are against migrants push, including migrants themselves. Like this is not us saying that only citizens are part of this. I mean, being part of the Latino community, a lot of Latinos voted for Trump. They knew what they were voting for. He was very honest from the beginning. So this is not us saying like, oh, this is just American white people saying this. Not at all. We're doing it to our own communities. But yeah, people are pushing this rhetoric that just do it legally and it'll be fine. And that's just, if we're actively rolling back programs that are protecting people that are supposed to be able to come and allowing people to come to the border and say, I need help. If you're rolling back all those programs and getting rid of those pathways, then there really is no way to come in legally and ask for citizenship. And so it's just what they are saying is one thing and what they are doing is another thing. And that's on purpose. They want people to be confused. They want you to believe one thing, even though they're doing a completely opposite thing. Because if that were the case, then he would invest more in resources to help people go through those legal pathways. If that was actually what he cared about and what the administration cared about, then they'd have more officers doing that. They'd have more immigration officers, not more ICE, not more Border Patrol, not more people that are instilling fear and just focus on deportations. They would focus more on getting people those legal pathways. So it's very clear what they're trying to do, and it's just instill fear and not let people in. I mean, that's clearly what they want. They only want certain types of people to be living in the United States. And that doesn't even include me, who was born here. Because of my family background, that doesn't even include me. So it's just clear that the administration and many other people in this country want to go to a version of the United States that isn't diverse at all.
Which is funny because really, I don't think we can stress this enough. The United States is what it is because of immigrants. We literally built this country. We've contributed to this country. Another false accusation that this administration likes to push as the reason for deporting migrants who have contributed to society here. Like the amount of tax revenue that has came in from immigrants, the amount of labor that we provided, and out of nowhere deciding to just push out these people who were some who were brought here by our government through farmer programs. And now that for whatever reason we're no longer seen as valuable, we're only being used as pawns. Now this is when you decide to push us out. Now after you've like sucked out all of this value that we've given to you, and the administration dares to say that we've done nothing for this country is it's completely just shocking. I still get shocked by this administration, and it's unfortunate to think that there are times where I'm not surprised, but definitely question everything that is being told by the administration. This also reminds me of why we need to do our own research.
I mean, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but I think it's just because immigrants make up a lot of the working class. And as much as the working class is not treated with dignity worldwide, I'd say, not just here, they continue to work. I mean, they just do what they need to do despite not being treated with respect at work, despite not getting sufficient benefits. And immigrants have always been more vulnerable to that when they don't have the right documentation. I mean, it's just so easy for companies to hire them, and large companies are hiring them. That's why right now it's such a scandal that, from what I know off the top of my head, Coca-Cola and I want to say Toyota or Hyundai, it was a Japanese car dealership from what I remember, or Korean, basically a foreign car dealership. Both of them and Coca-Cola got really famous in the news because there was a large deportation at one of their work sites. I believe the Coca-Cola one was here in Texas where I live. So that's just showing you that, I mean, these companies are huge. They know who they're hiring. Like, they're not, small companies that are trying to get away with something. It's very okay for companies to hire undocumented people until something like this happens. And so, like Adriana said, it's by design. United States was built off exploiting people. First, it was Native Americans, and then it was Africans, and now it's immigrants. And so this is not, for me, that's why this is not surprising. It's just a new population that the United States is exploiting. And I think for that reason, also trying to instill fear, because I feel like there's a part of the United States that understands that people are here only because they felt welcome. I mean, there was these programs and this idea of the American dream that brought all these people here. And now I feel like the United States is saying, oh, wait, there's too many of them. And we need to bring back that fear so they don't feel so welcome anymore. So we can actually not feel like we're continuing to welcome people. And I know there are some people that come into the country that are not doing great things for the country or for the communities, and they're hurting people, but citizens are also hurting people. Like, that argument is just not, it's definitely not the majority. And the way that the administration is using media and using to release ads about fear on TV, on radio, it's just so different from what I've seen before. Deportations aren't new. It happens under Democratic and Republican presidents. This is definitely not me saying like the Trump administration is the worst and all the other ones are the best. But the way that they're instilling fear, I think, is different. I mean, this is why this country just keeps saying that we're very divided. But it's because some people believe something about other people, and other people are, like Adriana, saying, no, I need to do my own research. I can't believe everything about this population just because the media says that they're dangerous or that they're filthy or whatever they feel like saying that day. So it really is on us to counteract those narratives. And it's hard. It's hard when people are around you saying, well, I saw this ad and that's what they believe now. So it really just takes all of us to have those conversations with the people around us, because we can't convince everybody, but we can at least shine a light and stay steadfast in that, and surround yourself with people from other cultures. I think that'll always be the cure, because if someone says something bad about a Colombian, but they're my friend, maybe they'll ask me, maybe they'll feel comfortable enough to ask me that question, and maybe we can talk about it and have a discussion about it. So that's the idea, at least, to have those cultural immersions.
I think you said it best. The same thing with not all American citizens are perfect. Yeah, there's plenty of things going on here that we don't even look into as much as we should, like school shootings. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, but I mean, the point that the majority of people who are being currently deported by ICE, they're not even the criminals that they're claiming that they're going after. I am glad that we're also touching on the point of the importance of also building that community. I know we can be a little bit of a broken record with that, but community does really matter. And this is how we are able to combat and rid of not only policies, but really, I think it's true. Like, it's accurate to say that some of these ICE agents are like kidnappers, not be presenting warrants, hiding their faces. It really can get as devastating as some of the videos are being shown in on social media. I'm sure a lot of us have seen those videos, and they're very disturbing. The way that they are slamming people to the floor. You could tell that these ICE officers aren't even trained individuals. They're literally anyone who they just grabbed off the street and convinced that they're doing the right thing by joining their force and kidnapping mothers, children, and forcing them into these horrendous conditions of these detention centers where people don't even have access to food or water or even to use the bathroom for hours while they're waiting for a legal process that should be taking place, but that isn't. Even US citizens are being arrested unlawfully. And the reason that we are bringing this all up is to not to instill fear, but to remind us that this is why it's important for us to all come together. We've seen successful cases where in cities like New York, where community members have driven out ICE and their malpractices. We need to continue to stay strong, and by no means do we ever want to put anyone in a situation where they might be unsafe, but there's ways to go about protecting your neighbors, whether it be pulling out and recording your phone or having a community alert system. That's one impactful way that we've been seeing a lot of people coming together, is whether it's adding on a map system that someone created to alert a viewing of ICE within the area. Or I actually saw in the news recently, I can't remember what state, but they were doing pink Post-its. If ICE had been spotted within an area, they would put a pink Post-it there to kind of give an indication, like, so you're aware they were in this area recently. There's a lot of crafty ways that we can all come together without necessarily putting ourselves in danger, and again, protecting our neighbors.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I have not heard of the Post-its. That's beautiful. I have heard of different ways that people have driven out ICE. I've seen videos of people using megaphones, just yelling, "Get out of our neighborhood, we know you're ICE." And then for anyone that's still inside, stay inside, like, ICE is here, don't come outside. So like alerting the whole neighborhood. Like Adriana has said, the reason that it feels like they're kidnapping is because it seems like they're going rogue, but it's under the law because they're not getting punished for it. So it's a weird balance between, are you rogue or not? But they're not like policemen where they show up with a warrant, where like policemen are supposed to do, but policemen also don't always do. It's weird because it feels like we are being told we're not following the law, and yet it feels like they really aren't following the law. So it's like, what is the law?
I love that call out of contradiction. That's
yeah.
the biggest issue here. If you can pick up on that, there's just so much contradiction.
So much contradiction, hypocrisy, and that's why I say it's by design, because they know what they're doing and they're being told to do this. Yeah, I mean, it's just very clear that what they're trying to do, again, instill fear. But yes, going back to good news, it has shown people that we need to double down. I feel like there are always organizations and groups and people working on this issue, immigrant justice. But right now, people really are focused on this, which is great because we really do need all the help. And people are doing it in so many different ways. There are protests that lasted days in Los Angeles, and people would bring food to protesters that were still there. There was just so much mutual aid, and that created a lot of connections and built a sense of belonging and community, especially for people who don't feel like that right now, who are very scared of what can happen to them and their families. I think that's all the more powerful right now. And it can be in the smallest ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be something as big. I know one lady in Georgia who has a neighbor who is an immigrant, and that neighbor had to go to an ICE hearing, and they just didn't feel comfortable leaving their house. And so that neighbor drove down to the office in downtown Atlanta and found someone to speak with, spoke on the person's behalf. Like, they use their citizenship and their privilege for that one person. And so it doesn't have to always be like this big, like, you have to show up to the protest. If you can't do that, if you don't feel comfortable confronting ICE head on, that's fine. You can use your resources in other ways, and just for the people around you. It doesn't have to necessarily be for everybody. And use your skills in other ways. Like the Post-it note was a great idea. That reminded me of one I saw, which is two ladies who met on TikTok So they met online and they created a database together that shows where ICE has been. That just shows no matter what skill you have, if it's very technical, if it's just creating a graphic or posting flyers. I know also one thing that's really important right now is to share know your rights, because ICE is not following people's rights and they are very quick to manipulate you to say, you need to come with me. But if you know your rights, even as an undocumented person in the United States, you have rights. And so you can recite those and they are supposed to back off, because if they don't have an accurate warrant, if they don't have accurate things, they aren't supposed to take you. Like we said, they're going rogue, and so they still may do it, but at least you are standing up for yourself. At least you're making sure that they know that you know your rights, because even if they do take you in, you can say it to somebody and eventually someone should be able to help you. And so, yeah, there are just so many different ways that you can help. You can fundraise for organizations that are helping. So I would just say, whatever it is that you do, like do your part and use your skills and talents towards it, and it'll be worthwhile.
We can all play a part. I think one thing that it's unfortunate that this administration has done pretty well is pinning ourselves against each other. I do want to acknowledge that at this time, it does feel like the majority of persecutions happening against migrants are specifically towards any of like Latin descent. In our case, it's our community because we are a part of the Latin community. But I want this to serve as a reminder that the next time that any other community feels attacked, that we remember this moment, if you are part of the Latin community, that we also need to stick up for others, because it really could happen to anyone. Yeah, that's just something I did want to acknowledge, because you can't help but notice it. So much of what's being shown, what they're pushing on the media, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I actually read an article a week or so ago about how Asian people are also getting harassed but aren't talked about as much. I feel like just because the border that is heavily patrolled and heavily talked about is the US-Mexico border, we think a lot about how that connects to Latin America and Latin migrants and how they're treated, but really is affecting people who just don't look American, quote unquote, as in who don't look white. And so it also is, I think, affecting certain people within the Latin community. Like there are people within the Latin community that may not look brown or who may have blonde hair, and so maybe they're not as attacked. When this all started, I saw a video of someone saying that people should start wearing blonde wigs when driving, and so they can kind of go like cameo and try to blend in. And they were like, this is not a joke. Like, I'm serious. Y'all should try this because it has actually worked for some people. That is to say, there are certain people that are getting more harassed than others, even if they're not necessarily migrants or not. Like literally, if they just look a certain way, then they're getting harassed. And so it just goes to show that this is happening to communities of a lot of different backgrounds. And yeah, so all the more reason that we should try to get past all that and be in this together, because it isn't just to Latinos for sure.
Absolutely. And again, they're doing this on purpose. They want us to make it seem like it's only us, because injustice is able to work better when we're, again, pinned against each other. So it's just something to remember, and I'm glad you're calling out. It can affect anyone who doesn't fit that standard, and that's why it's so ridiculous. Like, it is kind of funny to hear the blonde wig recommendation that people have been giving, and it's ridiculous because then it goes to show then they're not really doing their job properly. Then they're not really going after, because anyone could get away through the system that way, right? It just goes to show the judgment that's being used by this administration, and I just hope we all recognize that. But as we come to the end of this episode and really the end of this season, I'm very thankful to have had this conversation about immigration and everything going on with migrants here in the United States. I think I could speak for both of us in saying that these unfortunate circumstances is the reason that motivates Tania and I to do this podcast, to raise awareness, to try to build our own community and welcome you all as our listeners, and eventually as our friends, and as people that we would hope that you can reach out to us to, if there's any concern, whether it's going on within your city or how you feel of what's going on in the United States overall, or even in a different country. We want to build a community where we can rely on each other, and that's why this conversation just felt very fitting for the end of our season, as we, there will be a season 3. Yay. I want to say, I think we're taking this as fuel to continue this fight onward.
Yeah, as usual, please look at our show notes. We'll list organizations that we love that you can support and groups and activists that are spreading awareness. You can learn more. I wrote an article on this. I actually researched some of the policies that we talked about and also shared some of the good stories that I shared on this episode as well. So if you want to read that article, we'll link it as well. Yeah, as usual, for us, it's not spreading awareness just so we can say, yeah, listen to what we're talking about and then go about your day. The idea is that you can learn more with the resources we share, or take action in some way, or just look at an issue with a new spin on it and see what that does for you. It doesn't necessarily have to always be the same action that you're taking once you listen to one of these episodes, but whatever it inspires in you, we hope you just carry that forward, because we're here for the long run. So yes, definitely will be a season 3. Please come back for that. We don't have necessarily updates on that right now. So for that, you'll have to keep an eye on our social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Closing the Gap Pod, or you can email us at any point asking for updates. And yeah, I feel like this season has felt like we have shared a lot of great solutions to some problems that I think people didn't even know existed, and then other problems that were very obvious, and maybe the solutions weren't as obvious. So I just feel like it has, overall, even though we have touched on some heavy topics, I feel like overall it has felt very inspirational for me, at least, to know that there are people so dedicated to social justice, to know that they are willing to share their stories with us and with all of you, because they know that through that storytelling, we can inspire one another, motivate one another, connect with one another, and build something beautiful. So thank you for just being a part of that, because there's no storytelling if no one's listening. So this is why everyone involved, not just our guests, but the listeners, everyone involved is really important to making this what it is. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Closing the Gap, a social justice podcast. Adriana and I are so happy to have you here, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Until then, connect with us on TikTok or Instagram at Closing the Gap Pod, or email us at closingthegappod@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.